and welcome to Who Corner to Corner podcast. I'm one of your hosts, and my name is Jeff, and I'm joined as always by my good friend Paul.
Yeah, hello, that's me.
How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm really excited, thank you, Jeff.
Good.
My excitement levels are up to there. Really high, that is.
Well, we're not alone today, are we? We're joined by the wonderful Kevin McNally. Afternoon, Kevin.
Hi there, how are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, we're
Good, thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us today.
You're welcome, my pleasure.
So, we've got quite a few questions here. We're going to talk a bit about Doctor Who and Flux and Professor Jericho, and we've got some other topics that we want to talk about because you've done so much across your career, and we want to kind of talk a bit about everything if we can. But my first question for you is, how does it feel to be so embraced and so quickly by the Doctor Who community?
Well, it was quite shocking, really, because I know that the Doctor Who community was divided over, the latest incarnation, and that I was aware that there had been some criticism of the storylines and stuff lately, so I knew I was going into something contentious. But was glad to, because I really enjoy Jodie. I think she's absolutely wonderful, and she's certainly a joy.
Yes, we do too.
So for it to suddenly become so popular and people to be so warm about my character was a real thrill, and therefore totally unexpected.
All right, brilliant. Yeah, we're both big fans of the whole era, with Jodie, and we think she's wonderful. And we said this before on the podcast, but there's not long left with her on screen, so we're kind of bracing ourselves for for heartbreak. But
massive upsets.
Yeah. So, how did the role of Professor Jericho come your way?
I remember I was about to leave the country, and this script came through, and I thought, oh my God, I hope I don't like this, because I'm supposed to be going away. And of course, I started reading it, and I was like, oh no, this is a really great part. I could really enjoy doing this. And so I agreed to do it and delay all my plans. Of course, then I got to the end of the episode, and I said, well, it looks like there's going to be another episode here, and I'm supposed to be going away to America. And they said, yeah, just one more. And then, it ended up being
just one more.
It ended up being 3 in the end.
So that first script was Village of Angels.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah. It's a cracking story.
Yeah,
so what kind of pulled you in on that then?
Oh, I really loved the 60s setting. Obviously a wonderful baddie in the Weeping Angels, or the Whispering Angels, as I kept on calling them, and I had to be pointed out to me that was actually a rosé wine that I drank. Just that, and I loved when I got on the set and it was all that lovely 60s technology, and working with Annabelle, who was just terrific, a great cast all around, the people I worked with.
Yeah, that was my next question.
It really dragged me in. I just loved it from the beginning, really. And also the fact that I was playing a rather stuffy, lonely academic who they managed to believably make quite sort of brave and heroic. So I sort of appreciated that combination of qualities that they gave the character.
Yeah, I think the sort of the journey that he goes on, for the character, it's a huge thrill, isn't it? But yeah, he ends up doing something really heroic there, and sort of it felt to me watching it, and be interested to see what you both think. But it was like getting involved with the Doctor and that whole adventure kind of gave him a bit more purpose and a bit of a kind of validation of the things that he'd been researching, in his life as well.
Yeah, and of course, that wonderful speech that they gave me at the end when he said, I've lived more in my time with you than I ever have before, because I think he'd been rather sort of a hermit, celibate sort of chap who had just had his nose in a research office all of his life. So to suddenly find himself in the far reaches of the universe trying to save it was a bit of a one-up from the little village he'd grown up in.
Yeah.
It was good, wasn't it? And of course, there was that whole sequence of events where we got a glimpse of these massive adventures, like Raiders of the Lost Ark style at the turn of the century. That must have been a lot of fun to play.
It was terrific, and of course came completely unexpectedly in the second episode. Ending up in Tibet and on a big liner.
The hermit guy. Yeah,
I mean, it was so big and adventurous, and the Indiana Jones sort of element to it, I think, was quite cheeky and quite nice. I like that, particularly the graphics of the plane flying and stuff.
Yeah. Like that. Yeah, it was very indie, wasn't it? Yeah.
And we ended up at the Great Wall of China, which was terrific.
Yes.
Yep.
we believed that was actually the Great Wall of China.
Oh, we went. It was the real Great Wall of China. We went there.
It actually was. It was. That's quite amazing.
It's a castle.
It's brilliant. If it was a days before COVID,
it probably would have been.
They could have even done that. Who knows? Travel to China just to paint some stuff in a forest. Oh, it was brilliant. I mean, it was such good fun to watch, and it kind of disappointed me in some ways that we only ever got to see these little glimpses, but from those glimpses the whole world of that adventure kind of opened up, and we could kind of try and fill in the gaps, and if ever there was going to be a spin-off series of Doctor Who, either on TV or in Big Finish audio, I think I'm not alone in saying that we would dearly love to see the further adventures of Professor Eustacious Jericho.
Well, you never know.
There
might be something in the pipeline, but we'll have a think about that. I must say, as a sort of a coda to this, that a lot of I do the convention circuit a lot, and of course it's been rather taken over by Doctor Who the last few that I've done. And I get a lot of people telling me, "God, were you very disappointed when they killed your character?" And I haven't the guts to tell them that I finally said in the third episode, "I really have to go to the States now. Can you please kill me at the end of this episode?" But I suppose I've let them know now. But it was me.
Did you actually say that? Then?
Of my own doom.
Did you actually ask them then to kill off the character? Is that all you're doing?
Yeah.
Well, you know what? No one ever truly stays dead in Doctor Who. So,
that's true.
Yes. Perhaps there was some way.
I think the point that some people missed when they were sort of thinking that it wouldn't like to go on and on and on. I think for an actor, to have such a heroic exit as that is far more satisfying than sort of drifting on and coming in for the odd scene every now and again. So I was very happy with the journey and the arc, and as you said at the very beginning, the response has been terrific.
Yeah, and people really love you in it and the character, and that even though there is that kind of sadness that you didn't get to carry on that line that you had there at the end and that heroic moment, kind of like you say, that kind of makes up for it because it was such a great moment. So even though we'd have loved it to carry on, what we got there kind of kind of balances it out a bit.
It was very sad. I mean,
closure.
I know that it was lovely to film those last moments because it was at the end of the day. We didn't have much time, so we were sort of forced to do it very simply, which was nice. And also there was, because of that, the director was letting me do a lot of it rather than it being done by special effects or anything like that. So it was a nice acting moment as well as
brilliant.
A sort of a dramatic moment.
Yeah.
It was well shot, wasn't it? The way he kind of held that gun, the angle on that shot and the photograph, brilliant. Like you said, absolutely heroic. There's a lot of actors would kind of kill for that, I would imagine.
I have a special gold-coloured pen for signing that photograph when I sign it for people, because it has obviously come up a lot, that picture, because it's such a wonderful shot. And the funny thing, I can't remember anybody taking it. I don't know who took it for when, but it really is terrific. Yeah.
Yes, brilliant.
Well, we interviewed James Pardon, one of the photographers, on here a little while ago, didn't we, Jeff? Oh. And one thing he was saying was kind of how to inveigle himself into the action, into the actors, into the sets without anybody noticing, almost like lurking around and then just taking these snaps, and the occasional one the occasional snaps suddenly become just iconic and have a life far beyond that moment in which they were snapped.
Yeah, well, it certainly worked with that one. Yeah, and if it was him, I don't remember him sneaking under my armpit to take it. No.
You just never knew he was there. Oh, hello, James, there you are. Oh, yeah.
So
brilliant.
What was it like filming with Jodie and Mandip and John? You said just now, it was really good, but can you talk to us a bit more about it?
Yeah, it was really terrific. They're great people. They we did have a laugh, I'll tell you, and they sort of rather jokingly would talk about the Kevin McNally masterclass in acting, because they'd said that they said rather cheekily, well, we just don't do anything, we just say the lines, implying that I was doing an awful lot of acting. So it was sort of a slightly backhanded compliment, but it was interesting, and I had the very great joy of being in the makeup trailer with Mandip and Jodie on the day of my birthday. As I came in, they greeted me singing very loudly, "Happy birthday, happy birthday," and I have it on video, which I show occasionally to my children when they throw up.
One of those moments, but that was a lot of fun, wasn't it? Was it quite difficult? I mean, there were COVID restrictions going on, wasn't there? Was it challenging playing within those?
It was. I mean, I can't really remember if it lifted slightly in the third episode, but for the first two episodes, I was sort of either on set or in a hotel room in Cardiff that had no restaurant or bar. So I sort of kept going through this limited menu of 3 items in a sort of an endless circle, and there was nowhere else to go really. So
things were closed.
It was a little bit strange and a little bit sort of. I felt a little bit marooned there, as I'm sure everybody did. So that was a shame, but it was really nice in the last one. The restrictions were lifting a little bit, and I was able to go out and maybe go to a bar or go to a restaurant. But it was very bleak at the beginning. Yeah,
I can imagine. Yeah. So we've got a question here from Pringle Sauce, which is a great name on Twitter, and their username is @officiallysauce, and they said,
"Why not?
What was the funniest moment filming Flux?"
The funniest moment, they were all funny. I've got to tell you, I did particularly enjoy being at the top of the Great Wall of China with Mandip and John holding a Spark's legs as he hung over the wall, trying to retrieve a lost rope ladder. That made me laugh, but not enough to stop me taking a picture of it. That was very enjoyable.
Brilliant.
I had a great time. We had a great time down in the catacombs. That was really, really fun, running in and out of doors, and just so enjoyable.
That was quite a set.
Yeah, was it real? A real location?
No, it was a wonderful set.
Right,
an absolutely wonderful set. And some fantastic CGI as well. I remember running through one door and being told to imagine we were at a sea of lava, and we were actually on a bench covered in blue material. Yeah. But then to see it was really exciting.
Yeah. It did look pretty good.
Yeah, the effects work and the production values on the show have never been better than they have been in the last couple of years.
No, so, wonderful, yeah.
What's it like for you working green screen and doing all of that, and something not being there, or having to imagine?
Well, I particularly enjoyed so much of this because the only sort of green screen thing I did was that shot. My experience in the last 20 years, in fact, I usually say this when I do panels at the conventions. When I started doing Pirates of the Caribbean 20 years ago, if we wanted to split a ship in half, we split a ship in half. But more and more particularly with the advent of CGI and Marvel films, there's been more and more CGI, and it really sort of sucks the joy out of the process for me a little bit.
Does it?
And I think any actor will tell you that. But so what was lovely for this Doctor Who is that they did build wonderful sets like that, and we weren't doing too much of that. As I personally don't enjoy it.
I guess it's quite nice. I guess it's quite nice when they combine the elements. So, there's a real set that you can work within. There's a space you can react to. There's something that gives you the vibes and the feel of the place. But then they use CGI to maybe just expand the horizon slightly, so it becomes
I've always thought that CGI is at its best as an adornment, rather than the whole the whole thing. That you can embellish. I mean, I'm hoping. I had this conversation with a taxi driver yesterday, actually.
Did you?
Yes, I'm hoping that CGI starts to wane and we start to use. I don't know whether you're familiar with the series The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It was a lighting cameraman I was working with was saying, "Have you seen The Mandalorian? These are actually, you can see these sets. They're massive." TV screens that you act in front of.
They wrap around the whole set.
They wrap around the whole set, so you actually, it isn't the real thing, but you can see it and you can interact with it and feel it. So I'm hoping there's a lot more of that in the near future.
Yeah, I think there is talk of more and more of that. In fact, there was a chap on LinkedIn I was talking to the other day, and he'd been doing some filming with that kind of virtual production, and he said it was amazing. They could go places that they just literally couldn't do otherwise. But it gives the actors more to work with because there is something there, behind them rather than just a green screen for it.
I'm all for it.
Excuse me. So let's go back to the 80s a little bit and tell us about Hugo Lang. And we've got a question from Matthew on Twitter, who's disciple of Brad, and he would like to know how different was the process of making Doctor Who back then compared to recently?
Well, it couldn't be any more different because when I started work in the 70s, there was an awful lot of television work of perhaps dubious quality. And the process was that you rehearsed for a week and you went into a studio for 3 hours only, and you shot it all on sets in multi-camera, having maybe gone to a quarry in the west of London for the day, where they put up a rather shaky TARDIS. And of course, by the time I came round to Flux, the process had become far more cinematic. It's like shooting film. It wasn't like shooting film back then. It was like a sort of a hybrid of sort of televised theatre. It was in those days. You did the whole scenes all in one, and very, very different. I mean, people would be mystified by the process now. Going back to the Twin Dilemma, though, the very first time I was interviewed about that many years ago was by Tony Hancock, who I'm sure you're aware of, of Doctor Who. And we went to a coffee shop, and he seemed very nervous. So I said to him, just before we go ahead, Tony, I want you to know that I'm fully aware that the Doctor Who world regards the Twin Dilemma as the worst episode of Doctor Who ever made, and I'm not insulted by that knowledge. And he said, "Oh, good, I'm glad we got that out of the way."
Just clear the elephant out of the
room.
Yeah.
So when I first went on the set for Flux, I was introduced to Jodie, and we said hello, and she said, "Have you ever been in Doctor Who before?" I said, "Yes, I was in the worst episode ever made in the 80s. She went, "Oh, well, let's hope it's not like that now then."
No.
But I mean, it was still nonetheless tremendous fun. And I loved working with Colin, and I loved meeting up with him at Doctor Who conventions these days. We had a great time. And it wasn't the greatest of stories, but it sort of made it, it's a nice talking point for me when I meet people who enjoy Flux, that I have that 37-year gap. That's how long it took them to rebook me, 30 years.
You were obviously really busy in all that time, though, Kevin. Pirates of the Caribbean and everything else that you've been doing. But do you know what? Just on the Twin Dilemma, because I was watching it the other night. I thought, and I haven't seen this for a long time, and I was certainly one of those who wasn't that impressed when I first saw it. And I think a lot of that is because the story preceding it, in my opinion, is just so astonishingly good and still stands up today as one of the very best examples of Doctor Who when it all works. So the Twin Dilemma, by comparison, does feel like a bit of a drop-off. But watching it on its own the other day, and in a mood to kind of reevaluate it, I thought, well, it's not that bad. There are some decisions which you think if they did that now they would do differently, but I think the story itself is still reasonably solid. I think the only thing that really sort of stuck out was how the sets, how the studios are lit. There are literally no shadows at all in any of those sets, even the cave sets. Everything is just in almost two-dimensional in its relief, and that seems to be one of the biggest issues with TV in the 70s.
It is the problem when you look back at studio work, because it all had to be top lit, of course, because as you know, if you know anything about film, you move all of the lighting with every camera move, virtually. So, with 5 cameras, just everything had to be all round lit. Otherwise, it would look very peculiar. The fact is that it looks very peculiar anyway, but it would look almost you wouldn't be able to see anything. Really.
You'd have so many.
You'd be shooting some people, and the side of their heads would be black. You wouldn't see. You wouldn't see anything.
Or you'd have another light in shot that was working in another camera angle, and it would just be really, really difficult, wouldn't it? Yeah,
kind of weird. But in some ways, I mean, that doesn't always detract from the story, because I know you were in I, Claudius as well, weren't you? Which is a bit earlier than the Twin Dilemma, and that is, I think, the kind of exemplary illustration of what you were saying about TV plus theatre, that kind of combination, because it is very theatrical in its presentation, but it is absolutely riveting. And there's a moment where you just go beyond the surface detail and become so engrossed in the characters and the drama and the story that the kind of almost plasticity of it, that kind of fake feel just vanishes, like when you're watching good theatre.
Well, Herbie Wise was a genius, and what's interesting about it, I've had 20 and a 40-year anniversary of I, Claudius now. I mean, what's fascinating about it, watching it, is that there are some extraordinary things in it, like Brian Blessed's death, which was just close to
with his eyes open all that time.
There's a whole scene between George Baker and John Castle where they just play squash, and they do the scene and keep this game of squash going. There is a scene in a market that me and Derek Jacobi did that was Studio One, built as a market and lit, and it looked like it's the outside. So that was that form of television at full tilt, and it stands up to this day, I think.
I think so. I think it really. Have you seen it, Jeff? You've seen?
No, I've seen bits of it, I think, and I'm aware of what what the show is and things. But I haven't actually seen it, so I'll have to hunt it down. It must be on streaming somewhere, and I can check it out.
Highly recommended to you.
I think you may have to go to your antique shop and get a DVD player.
A DVD.
Or it might be on VHS. I don't know if it is available. It must be on DVD.
No, it's
somewhere.
DVD.
Sure,
it must be
it's one of the biggest selling DVDs around, really? Actually,
really?
Just because of the generation of people who remember that. That show.
I was just going to say that it's the perception of the Twin Dilemma. Episodes often get these kind of views on them that are not necessarily true or accurate about them, and whether that is the worst episode ever or not is sort of up for debate, I would imagine. But certainly for myself and Paul, I think Village of the Angels is absolutely one of the best Doctor Who episodes, and we came online we came online to do our podcast recording after the episode had gone out. And I could hardly talk because I said that is the best cliffhanger that Doctor Who has ever had.
He was so excited, Kevin. You should have seen him. He was like a little boy bouncing up and down.
That is, that what an incredible episode. Everything about it, and it was brilliant. I was sat there. My wife was in the room when I was watching, and she's not really into Who. I don't know why I'm still married to her, to be honest, but and she sort of looked up and she saw Jodie turn into the to the weeping angel, and she said, "What's going on? What does that mean?" And I was going, "I don't know. I don't know." And it just they resolved it quite quickly the week after. But those cliffhangers were just brilliant. Across the series.
No, absolutely. I mean, I walked away thinking, I wonder how they're going to solve that, not knowing that I was going to be involved.
Yeah.
So it was nice what you said about Colin Baker there, because again, wrongly, I think his doctor is sort of got a bit of a perception from his time on screen, but he's had such a wonderful career on Big Finish afterwards, and his doctor he's just been brought to life, hasn't he, Paul? Really, and fleshed out so much.
I did a very confusing Big Finish recently when I actually couldn't work out how many doctors I was working with. There seemed to be 100 of them.
Right.
And there was Colin and there was David and I think Paul McGann, although I didn't talk to him. I didn't do a scene with him. It was really wonderful. Peter Davidson. It was really wonderful.
There's so much Big Finish that, and we've talked about this.
Well, that just could be another one that looks like the one I was in. I don't know.
Yeah, it's all so good.
I think I've done 2 of them during lockdown.
Okay. It's hard to keep on top of them all.
Yeah.
It is, isn't it? I'm just looking.
Well, what with one thing and another, the last 2 years have been incredibly busy for me, which I'm tremendously grateful for, because I don't do well sitting around doing nothing.
Yeah.
But being able to do things like the Big Finish shows and podcasts and things that perhaps I normally wouldn't have had time for before, it's just really filled up my time, and I've enjoyed it every second of it.
Yeah, I think I run a little video company, Kevin, and when lockdown happened, all the work I had just collapsed, and everyone I know that does the kind of stuff that I do, or like you do, in acting and presenting, it was quite a scary and worrying time. So when someone says they've been busy, and it's so good to hear that, because I wonder if it was as scary for you as it was for for us when it all kicked off, and any bookings you had fell apart. And
well, there was one stroke of good luck, is that in January of 2020, I was bemoaning the fact that this rather wonderful, well-trained voice of mine was not used enough, in my opinion, for voiceovers and stuff like that. So I invested in some rather professional.
Oh yeah, look at that! Yeah.
Oh, look at that
equipment. Little boxes and things like that.
Lots of tricks.
Sorts of microphones. So as soon as the lockdown happened, everyone was like, to the agents, who can record at home?
Yeah.
And so I was like that. So me and my wife were just doing voiceovers the whole time and narrating TV shows. And so that kept us going for the initial shock, So the wine bill was being paid, at least, for the first 3 months.
It's very important.
Very
to
important.
That one going, that's for sure. Yeah.
So that took the brunt off the beginning, and then one could recalibrate and start to think about doing little films with people. I work with a lot of young talent who, as I say, I might not have had the time to work with before. So a lot of positive things came out of it for me.
That's good. That's really good. So you've done. I was looking at your list of credits the other day, and your list of work in general is huge. But your TV credits, Supernatural, Downton Abbey, Spooks, is just massive. But so, what's been your favourite role to play? What's something that you
that's a big
really
question.
enjoyed over?
Well, I say this answer a lot because I always tell people who ask me that, what is so fortunate about my career is my favorite role is always my next one. And so I'm about to do a project that I'm as excited about as I was about my very first job 14 years ago. But plainly, at the age of 47, when Pirates of the Caribbean came out, there was a paradigm shift in my life, in that I went from being a highly employed British character actor to somebody who is employed worldwide now, and the travel has been amazing. just the accessibility of work everywhere for me has been really terrific. So, that obviously Joshua Gibbs in Pirates of the Caribbean, holds a very soft spot for me.
Mm.
Yeah.
I was going to ask about Pirates, and you've kind of touched on it a bit there. But almost 20 years of your life kind of involved with the series, and I imagine it just changed everything, didn't it? And we chatted recently with Sam Spruill, who played Swarm in Doctor Who Flux, and we were talking about some of the big things he's done, and he said he doesn't feel like he's kind of hit the big time in the way that like someone like Robert Downey Jr. might be, or something, or Johnny Depp, but he's been doing work in big things that has kind of helped change the path of his career. So it's been similar for you, I guess. And
completely completely the same. And the other thing is that it's done that and opened up the world in America without any of the downside of the sort of fame you're talking about, because you talk to people like Johnny Depp or Robert Downey Jr. about what the particular fame they have means, and it's a very complex response they have to it, and a very complex relationship they have with it. I love the fact that I know that most people I see in the street, wherever I go in the world, have seen me on the screen, but very few of them interact with me. So, I mean, and I love it when people do. But on the whole, I walk around pretty anonymously, just looking like an old bloke. I mean, if anything, people, if I stay still too long, will throw money at me because I'm just a tatty old fella. But it's you really find out when you go to the conventions about how what an effect it's had, and very,
that's where that
very
love
movingly
comes
at times. I had something recently happen where a girl. I find this quite difficult to talk about, actually, but a young girl had been trying to come up and speak to me, and eventually we encouraged her to come over. And her story basically was that she'd had a very abusive childhood, and she told me that if it wasn't for Pirates, she probably wouldn't be here. That it had been a place that she could go to, a fantasy she could live. That got her through the very worst times. And you hear something like that, and you want to say to younger actors, if you're out there and you're interacting with the public, don't ever take it, don't ever be sarcastic, or don't ever, take it for granted, because you might meet that girl one day, and you have to respect her story.
Yeah, that's lovely to hear. And Paul and I, we've talked to other Whovians, haven't we, over the years, and I think it's the same for us as well. But the show, it means so much, and for people, it's like you said, their safe place to go, and it's that comfort, and you have a connection with the Doctor. And so I went to the London Comic Con recently that Jodie and Mandip were at.
Yes, I was going to go to that. I missed it. I had to go away.
Yeah, I knew you were at one recently, but not at that one. Yeah. And so I got to go meet Jodie and Mandip, and it's only brief, but it was such a kind of amazing moment, and there were people that were coming out after me, and they were in tears over it, because it just meant so much. I mean, I'm quite rock hard, and I couldn't, I wasn't crying about it.
Stony faced adult,
hid
but
it,
deep down,
but,
Jeff.
and it's wonderful, and I think it's so important when, like you say, when you meet the fans to give that little moment to them, and I can't remember, someone said this in an interview once, but they're the ones kind of effectively paying the wages, and it's always a bit upsetting when you read a story about, I met so and so and they were really rude to me and things. And
yes, I mean, a lot of us on the convention circuit find that appalling, because although obviously there is a financial reward to doing it, I think when you come across people who are only doing it for the money, and have things like please don't have eye contact with the artist, or you can't talk to the artist, or you can't ask them a question, then you just think, well, what's the point of going, really? And of course, what they don't realize is
for them and for the fans.
Say, I've just met and what a they were. It's I wish people like that wouldn't do it, actually, and it gives it a bad name as well.
It does, doesn't it? And like we were saying, for someone like Johnny Depp, the level of fame is it's just mind-boggling, isn't it? I think to comprehend a life and a world like that. And
actually, Johnny has a word for it. Johnny calls it the circus. He says, when I'm not here working, the life that I have around me, I call the circus. It's this big thing that goes around with him, the fame and the inability.
That's a good name for it.
Any sort of reasonable.
That's it. It
probably helps him deal with it as well, doesn't it? Because we've all got to have a coping mechanism for that.
Yes,
suddenly
indeed.
Catapulting into superstardom.
That's it. Although Johnny's, I notice of late is indulging his love for music, which I think will make him very happy.
Yeah, that's good. Do you talk to him a lot? We can cut this bit if you want, but
no, you don't have to. I don't speak to him in between the jobs. We have a great time when we work together, but we've never socialized outside of the job. But quite right too. You can't become friends with everybody, but the working relationship is terrific. Yeah.
Brilliant, yeah.
So he's a good pro on set, is it?
Oh, absolutely, a team player. I mean, wonderful, I can't praise him highly enough as both an artist and a man.
Brilliant, that's lovely. So tell us a bit more about working on Pirates, because the films are great fun and they're absolutely massive. And like you said, nowadays you'd probably have a pirate ship, and you do it digitally and stuff. But back then they were building pirate ships and putting them on actual ships so they could sail them, weren't they? And then firing cannons and stuff at each other. I mean, it's it came.
It must have been just like a brilliant playground to just get all of that pirates role play.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because people often ask me, what's it like making a pirate film? And I say, well, it's just like playing pirates when you were a kid, but the toys are better.
Yeah,
I mean that's
and real. Yeah. So
and things really do go bang and boom and everything else, and yes.
So and that's
I have a big problem, of course, whenever I've just done a Western for the first time.
Oh, really?
Which is really.
Do you do your own sound effects, Kevin?
I do. I can't stop myself.
Yes, good man.
And also when I do fight sequences,
because I would
when I do fight sequences, the stuntmen are always saying, "Can you stop going poof, poof?" We'll provide that later.
It's like the stories I hear from was it like Ewan McGregor and that, when he first went on the set of Star Wars and he starts doing with their lightsaber noises.
I can totally relate to that. I mean,
That must be a good thing about an actor, is that in some ways, you get the right part, you can just be like a big kid if you want if you want to be.
Absolutely. I mean,
but with the professional aspects, obviously.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, what I think is I teach students a lot, and I always say to them, the more you prepare, the more you enjoy yourself on the day, And I'm always really well prepared, as are most actors, very, very well prepared. So that on the day you just have fun, And my God, there's some fun to be had on Pirates.
Well, I've got a question.
Same thing with Doctor Who, of course, as well.
Yeah.
Well, Orinoco McGee, who is at Deadly Night on Twitter, says, "Did you get up to any crazy shenanigans whilst filming Doctor Who and Pirates? That you can tell
Cardiff in lockdown? No." There were no shenanigans
running between the trailers.
The height of my evening would be my third glass of rosé wine before I went to bed with the script.
There you go. That's all right. That's something to do, isn't it?
So for you, Pirates has been 5 films, isn't it? And a number of video game voice parts as well. So is it quite nice to have a character that becomes yours and you become, but vice versa, and that every so often it comes back up again for you to go back out and do?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a funny story about that, actually. When after the third pirate film, a video game came out. I think it was one of those Wii games back in the day.
Right.
And they didn't bother asking any of the original actors to do the voices. And there was a guy doing Mr. Gibbs. And I mentioned this to a fellow voice actor, and he said, "Oh, I know that guy." I said, "You haven't got his phone number, have you?" He says, "Yeah, I have." I said, "Dial it for me and give it to me." So we dialed this guy, and I said, Hi, this is Kevin McNally here. If you ever play Mr. Gibbs again, I will find you, I will find your family, and I will kill you all. And he went, is that really you, Kevin? I said, yes. So I think he told them at Disney that I'd said this. And so they started asking me to, I'm sorry for robbing him of the gig, but I just didn't like the fact that somebody else was playing Mr. Gibbs. And
no, you're right.
I did everything of Mr. Gibbs after that.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. Yeah, it's a bit like we were listening to some Big Finish, weren't we, Paul? That had a guy called Jacob Dudman doing kind of interpretations of like Peter Capaldi or Matt Smith, and they're very good. And he really is excellent, but there is something about.
But it's not.
It's not them,
It's not the 12th.
And it's like playing a video game of based on a film or something, and when it's not the actual actors doing the voices, you can just tell, and like no matter how good they are, it's not quite the same. So that's great that you get to do that. So do you think there'll be any more Pirates Adventures? I know there was talk a while ago about kind of a female-led version.
It's very hard to say whether talk is generated by the studios or whether talk is generated by social media. I personally have not heard any concrete plans about the future. I think there are two things to bear in mind. One is that although all of the pirate films have made money, the last two did not do well domestically in America, particularly, and that's very important to the studio. And the other is that being one of the oldest franchises, maybe the third oldest to Star Wars and Lord of the Rings, it's remarkably linear. It's not. There isn't a Pirates of the Caribbean universe in the way there is a Marvel universe.
No, that's
so
true.
I think there is some discussion maybe going on at Disney about what even direction they would take if they wanted to do another pirate film. I personally don't quite understand why Mr. Gibbs isn't starring in his own story, Tales of the Caribbean, on Netflix.
I think that absolutely should be a thing.
But perhaps we'll start a campaign here.
You would have a some ongoing other directions for it.
Yeah, like a spin-off that allows you to explore a different part of that whole kind of world. And
because you're right, it
allows different stories to be told.
It is a rich world, with the pirate themes, obviously, and the supernatural element, and the fantasy and stuff.
I mean, the only thing I have to say is they better get a bloody wiggle on, because ain't none of us getting any younger. You know what I mean?
Well, I imagine you're quite busy as well, Kevin. You got loads.
I
of stuff
am,
going on.
I mean, but I just worry that it'll come back and it'll be called Pensioners of the Caribbean.
Boom! That was good. Almost scripted. Look at that. Do you have a favourite of those films, Kevin?
Yes, I might. The first one, of course, nobody anticipated quite how successful and how quickly successful it was.
Do you know? I remember reading about the panic about Johnny's performance as Jack Sparrow.
Swarming over us all day long, every day.
Really? It wasn't written like that, was it? And I think they got a bit freaked out when he started being a bit wobbly and a bit camp.
I love that,
but that's what,
because it was so unexpected. I didn't expect Johnny Depp to play it like that,
or to do a film like that.
Instantly, I'm going to watch this now, because I had no interest in it until I started watching it, and I thought, and his performance drew.
Absolutely. I mean, he instantaneously, from nowhere, produced a legendary mythical performance. It was just extraordinary. It was a great privilege to be part of and to watch it unfold.
So, how did the
in answer to your question, my favourite film is the second one, because it has the most Mr. Gibbs in it.
Yeah.
which is an entirely reasonable answer as far as I'm concerned.
We can let him have that one, can't we, Jeff? Yeah.
So, how did those films come your way? Did you get a call about them, or did you have to audition and go through the process?
What happened was I had been, a few years before, I'd realised that I hadn't made a film for about 9 years, I think. And I phoned up my agent, and I'm not going to accept any more work until I'm going to try to get a few little film credits so that I'm on the lists, when things get cast. And so a friend of mine put me in a small part in Spice World, and another friend put me a small part in Sliding Doors, and then I got a film called I don't know, it was an Irish thriller. I can't remember what it was called. And then I got a nice little role in the Sean Connery, Catherine Zeta-Jones film Entrapment. And then I got another little film. But all the way through all this, I'd been going up for American films because I'd started to get, people, I was getting on people's lists again. And I would never get an American film. And in fact, at one point, I remember going up for Spider-Man and coming away and saying to a friend of mine, they'll give it to William Defoe or somebody. And indeed, they did. It was the Green Goblin.
They did.
Yeah. So it comes to my birthday in 2002, and I'm sitting in the back garden drinking my rosé wine, as usual. And somebody said to me, don't you have an audition today? I said, yeah, it's for an American film. I never get them. So I don't think I'm going to bother going. And they said, oh, come on, it's a ticket lottery. You must go on. I said, well, I can't. I've had a few drinks now. I'm a bit pissed. It's for a pirate. It doesn't matter how pissed you are. So she drove me to the interview.
Yeah, exactly. Getting into character.
She drove me to the interview, and I was just asked, the casting director said, the director has asked you to sort of tell a story like a pirate, which I did. I was feeling very relaxed and happy, and they offered me the part the next day, and I couldn't believe it, actually.
Wow.
It was extraordinary.
God,
it was only by not wanting to do it.
I
get it. It's a real lesson, I think, to young actors.
Yeah.
That you got it. Yeah. She insisted that she took you there.
Yeah, exactly.
And
and
then it becomes legendary.
You've got to take every opportunity, haven't you?
Yes, you have. Yeah, absolutely.
So let's go back even further and tell us how you got your start in the acting world, and what was it that inspired your love of acting?
I think it was a mixture of enthusiasm and also a lack of application. I remember being in a maths class when I was about 6 or 7, maybe, drifting off. You could see the airport from my school windows. I used to watch planes taking off.
Right.
And so that people were doing these. I was not very good at maths, and people were doing this math book, and I thought, I don't know, what is 7 times 11? I don't know. And the teacher did something very
I still don't know.
You know the answer. The teacher wrote this line on the blackboard, and I thought, what she's doing that for? And then she rubbed it out and said, class, can anybody tell me what I just wrote on the blackboard? And I said, you wrote, my sunbeams are dancing in the meadow below where tulips and daisies and daffodils grow. She said, right, you've got the lead in the Harvest Festival play. And I thought, bloody hell. And so I did it. And then my mum came along, and she was so thrilled with my performance as the sun in the Harvest Festival play that she bought me a Mars bar and a Beano. And I thought, so I get rewarded for not paying attention in class. This seems like a job for me.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Funny enough, I played King Lear many years later at the Globe Theatre, and I told this story to the publicity department. And on the first night, they gave me a copy of the Beano and a Mars bar, which I thought was really nice.
Did they?
Which I kept.
You should. Oh, lovely! You should put that in your.
That should be like a standard.
Your
payment
rider.
For King Lear, shouldn't it?
How much will you do this film for? 18 Beanos and 14 Mars bars, please.
Yeah.
A year subscription. Yeah.
Stick a Snickers in there for an extra special one. Yeah. Some of that. That's lovely. That
and I'll have an annual as well.
Marvelous. Yeah. Well, I don't know about an annual, mate. You do an annual, we've got to do the matinees. You've got to do the matinees if you want an annual.
And now you're driving a hard bargain there on that.
Yeah, he's asking a lot. These actors, they do that, don't they? Hey? What do they think they are?
Obviously, he thinks a lot of himself. He's really up himself. He's up himself these days. He wants an annual.
He's up it, mate. He's up himself. Yeah. Do you know what? Actually, on that, do you... Because given the widespread variety of characters that you played, do you find yourself digging into accents as a part of personality? Have any of those been kind of difficult? Have you had to play a bit more Cockney or like Northern or something?
Yeah, like that? I love doing accents, and I've done a lot of them, and I've had to really in America research it because I had a rule, although I've just broken it recently. I don't like to play English people over there because I found that
that's interesting.
Yeah, I found that if you've got an English accent and you're very English over there, you either play Nazis or Romans, So,
I have noticed this in American
bad
TV.
guys.
Yes.
So I tried to play American over there a lot, and in fact, I'm about to do a big movie for Paramount in which I'm playing one of the leading roles, and I'm playing it American. I work at it quite hard. But I've actually, the ADRing I'm doing this afternoon is for a show I've just done in New York, in which I was asked to play an Englishman because Rachel Weisz is the lead in it. I'm playing her father. Rachel's, English, as you know. So but I love doing accents, and in fact, I'm a northerner in that. So I shall be bringing out my Leeds accent this afternoon.
Is that where you're from? Leeds, is it?
Huh?
Are you from Leeds? Are you? Was it
the characters from Leeds?
Oh, the characters.
No,
from
I'm
Leeds.
from Birmingham.
Yes. You're. I'm just looking on your Wikipedia page, which says born in Bristol, early years in Birmingham. So that's quite a thing, isn't it? Really. Yeah. That's great. That is.
I'm not often asked to bring out my Birmingham accent, but I brought it out a little bit in Downton Abbey, actually.
Did you?
Yeah, playing a Richard
I should know that if I'd watched Downton Abbey. Of all the things you've done, that's one I haven't seen.
Oh, there's a treat.
Sorry, I can't claim to watch that one. It's pretty good, isn't it? It's still going. Are they?
No, they're doing movies now. They've done 2 movies, and I think they're thinking about doing a third.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Yeah,
that's pretty good.
So, Kevin, you used to write TV under a pen name, didn't you? Some years ago.
Yeah.
So, did you enjoy doing that? And is it something that you would do again today? Not necessarily under
I did enjoy doing that, but it is something I definitely wouldn't do again. When I was writing with my writing partner Bernard Dempsey as Kevin Sperring, my mother's maiden name. The world of television was a very different place, So, and what we would do is we would go meet the producer, and I wrote Minder mainly, and I would go in and say to them, okay, we've got an idea. We're going to do Arthur Daly has a feud with Dave, who runs the bar. They were great. Go ahead and do it. So we would come back with a script about 3 weeks later, and they would film that script and they would put it on the television. Very simple, easy process.
Yeah,
easy process.
By the time of the late 90s, it was, well, if you've got an idea, can you bullet point it? Then can you do some screen breakdowns? And
break
then
it all down.
Change it. Can you do another screen breakdown? And then maybe 3 months later, you would get down to actually writing a script. And I remember turning around to Bernard and saying, I'm not doing this anymore. It's just, like green screen in film, they've managed to suck all of the joy out of writing for television. Yeah.
Do you think a lot of that sort of thing, like you mentioned that the suits were swarming around on pirates in fear, is because there's it's just panic. They're scared to take a chance on things, and just kind of play it safe on a lot of stuff.
You can see television and entertainment by committee nowadays, in so much as there are so many reboots and remakes of things. It's a very brave young executive at a studio who will decide on something new when they can go and do something that's already proven. Yeah. So, there is a sense of, we were left to it back in the day. I remember Herbie Wise about I, Claudia saying they handed him £1 million and said, make a 13-part television program about I, Claudius, and he went ahead and did it. He never heard from them until they put it out, and they said, "Oh, that was very good, thank you." So those were the days, as we say.
Well,
those were the days, Governor.
It's a bit like Doctor Who back in its early days. And you'll have read about this as well, Paul. But it was. I phoned up a mate and said, "We need a script for Doctor Who. What ideas have you got?" And the script came in, and sometimes you see the stuff in Doctor Who magazine, don't you? It's photocopies of letters and pages and stuff that's sent out, and it's completely different.
It's incredible they ever got it made.
Yeah,
when you think
but also the kind
of
like you say, the simplicity of it and the sort of ease. You could just write the script, mail it to your friend, and
stick on the back of a fag packet and put it in the post.
Yeah, and it wouldn't happen like that at all these days.
Those are the days.
Yeah,
those was the days. Although with your writing, Kevin, you do have a novel out there, do you not?
I do. Sons of
because
Soul.
I'm looking at it right now. Sons of Soul. That's the one. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that, if you will.
Well, I think it was about 10 years ago. I was in LA, and I thought, I'd love to get back to writing again, but I'd like to write a novel. I like the idea of finding out if you can actually tell a story just through the written word. That's what novels are. And I'd always done it through script writing. And I thought, well, what are my favorite things? I love science fiction and I love comedy. So I'll do a comedy science fiction book. But I thought I'd do a bit of research. And I was fortunate that at that point, Gollancz had decided to produce the 100 best sci-fi books of the 20th century. So I read them. Yeah. I read all of them.
You read all
of them. And then I sat down for 5 months and wrote a first draft. And then I got very busy. And then I came back to it later and wrote another draft. And then I had it with a guy who wanted to produce it, but it didn't happen. And then last year, I was doing a little short film for a man who wants to make a film about the Three Musketeers, and I was playing an old musketeer. And I was talking to the producer, and he was saying, "What else are you up to?" And I said, "Well, my one regret is I wrote a novel and it never got published." He said, "Oh, I publish novels. Is it a genre book?" I said, "Yeah, it's science fiction." He said, "Give me a read of it." He had it published in a month.
Wow, brilliant! That's what you need.
A real can-do guy. Dean Drinkle is his name.
Yeah,
and I couldn't recommend him highly enough. In a thing called Domain Publishing, which is very much a genre.
That's it.
Horror and stuff like that.
Yeah. We and he got some good reviews on there as well.
Yeah, I got some very good
reviews. Got a good review. Yeah,
I think people thought, "Oh, McNally's cashing in on his name a bit."
But even if that were true, why not? Though
you got to use everything. So I think their expectancy was so low that they were quite pleased that it's quite a snappy little tale of people being chased around.
I'm going to get it. I'm going to get this, and if I get it, you're going to have to sign it for me, Kevin. That's
of course
that is a fact.
Yeah, that's the deal.
I'll give you Mars bars.
All right, Mars bars and Beanos, please.
There you go. Job done. That's negotiation for you right there. But it does look a lot of fun. I like that. Sci-fi comedy,
that sounds
Douglas
good,
Adams, Red Dwarf.
Yeah, exactly.
And now Kevin Armour.
All that lovely genre,
That's that little story you told us there, and you mentioned it to the producer, and he said he publishes, and it's a bit like the pirate story. If you hadn't gone to the audition, obviously you'd never have got it. And
absolutely, and if I hadn't gone out for a drink with the producer of this, I wouldn't have my book published today.
Yeah. And it's
funny that, isn't it? Chance encounters through life that you have no idea and almost no control over how or when they're going to occur, and yet they do, and they change you in some
your direction completely. Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, as I always say to my young actors, there are also times when you have to do it yourself. And there have been about 4 times in my career when I've gone, this isn't particularly going the way I want. I've got to. One of them being saying to my agent, I'm not working unless it's a film.
Yeah.
So I get back to filming. Yeah. Which has paid off royally, of course. So, at some point, you have to go. No, I also there was a little period in the 80s when I thought the stuff I'm doing isn't very good, so I think I've got to not do it anymore.
Yeah, you do have to work it yourself, don't you? But there is luck and cosmic intervention or whatever you want to call it, and like we were saying earlier, if you don't take an opportunity of any sort. It's like when I said we spoke to Sam Sproul for the podcast, and I went to film a show at Chichester Theatre that he was in, and I didn't realise it was him in it. And I said to the other guys I was filming with, he was the bad guy in Doctor Who recently, and I said I've got to go and say hello just to tell him how great he was in it. And then we got chatting, and podcast came up, and blah blah blah, and went from there. And I'd have always kicked myself if I hadn't gone and done it, even though it wasn't a bit, it was just saying hello and things like that. But with work, and acting, you've just got you talk to anyone because you never know what might come from it. And things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's imperative, absolutely imperative. Yeah.
So I've got a question here from Gail, who's Mealy Garage on Twitter, she says, "I've been loving the missing Hancock episodes on the radio. Yes. Are there plans to do more, or even a small stage tour?"
Well, we filled in all the gaps. We did all 22 of them. We did one on the television, and we went to the Edinburgh Festival in 2015 and did it as a stage show. Just before lockdown, somebody did come to me and express an interest in doing some more of the missing televisions. Sadly, that went into abeyance for 2 years, and I don't know. If I was going to contact him this week and say, is that an idea we could pick up again? sadly, I'm 20 years older than Hancock was when he committed suicide. So I'm going to have to, put a lot of moisturizer on and a lot of spray in my hair to do it again. Although he didn't look great towards the end of his life. But I would be open to doing anything Hancock related, apart from do anything that you could hear him doing. There's no point in that. I've only ever done that once, and that was I did the test pilot sketch at the Royal Albert Hall for the 100th anniversary of the RAF. But I sort of did that in memory of my dad, who was in the RAF, and it wasn't televised, and it was in front of an audience, and it was for a very good cause. So.
Yeah, that's good.
Do you know it's because before lockdown, when I was doing a lot of driving up and down the country, and you're always looking for something to listen to. There's got to be something more. And I years ago, I happened on Radio 4 Extra, which is the station that plays a lot of those old school comedies from, way back when they started. And you hear John Pertwee, in the Navy Lark, and there's the guys in Round the Horn and all those things. And it's a real eye opener. And I found an absolute love for that old school comedy. It's very much of its time, and there are occasions when you have to be quite forgiving for it. But just the sheer joy that comes through the radio, and and so it means a lot. I think is what I'm getting to is bringing to life all those Hancock episodes that we would just never be able to hear. From having been lost over the years.
It's funny because I was actually in Virginia shooting a TV show that I did for about 4 years over there. I was going for my morning walk, and I got a very long email from Neil Pearson explaining all of this, and I just sent back yes. I thought I'd been trying to do something about Hancock for years, and I suddenly realized when he asked me this, I suddenly realized when he asked me as well, I didn't want to do a film actually about him being a hopeless alcoholic and an arsehole. I wanted to do him at his best, and this seemed the obvious way to do it. The funny thing was, he told me later that he'd taken this idea. It was the 60th anniversary of the first Hancock, and he'd taken this idea to the BBC, and they said, well, of course, it's very it depends very much on whether you can find a Hancock or not. That's the main problem. He thought, God, that's going to be a struggle. And that night, he went to a party and met Andy Hamilton, and he explained his dilemma to Andy. And Andy said, look no further. Kevin McNally's your man. It's hard to get him not to be Hancock, even when he's playing a psychopath. So they offered me the job.
That was amazing. That was like Andy Hamilton was just in the podcast. It was uncanny.
We were.
So you have to put with extra special guest Andy Hamilton on the bottom of this. Yeah.
So the rest is history. So it was just terrific. It wasn't until the first performance, and Neil said, and as the lad himself, Kevin McNally, I walked out and I thought, oh my God, what am I doing? This could be a disaster. People throw tomatoes at me. But fortunately, it was received very well, and I had very much the same stomach churning when I played, Captain Mannering, and that was nerve-wracking. But
is it the responsibility of the character then, because it was played so, or
it's the specificity.
Those characters were encompassed so fully.
It's the specificity of playing somebody very famous's version of a character. You're not playing. I wasn't playing Captain Mannering. I was playing Arthur Lowe's version of Captain Mannering, and I wasn't responding to that Galton and Simpson scripts as Kevin McNally. It was Tony Hancock doing those scripts. So that's the extra layer. That gives you the willies. About.
It's almost like 2 in 1.
Yeah. It is. It's 2 jobs in one.
Well, that leads me to a question I had here about the Lost Dad's Army episodes that you were doing. So, did you try to replicate the performances as they were, played on screen, or did you do it your way? So,
no, I wanted to do it. I wanted to be as much like Arthur Lowe as possible. I don't think anybody was interested in my version of Captain Mannering. They want to see someone quite skillfully recreating Arthur Lowe. And of course, the problem is that the moment somebody asked me to play Tony Hancock, I've adored Tony Hancock all my life, and I knew I could do it. I had never for a moment considered anybody was going to ask me to play Arthur Lowe. And in fact, when Tom Webber, who produced it, asked me, I said, give me a week and I'll let you know. And I just immersed myself in Dad's army. And slowly over a few days, I found I was walking up to the bedroom going, oh, what is it now, Elizabeth? And I thought, oh, I think there is one in there. I think I can do him. So I phoned it.
Yeah. That put shivers up my spine, that did. It was just Arthur Lowe again. So it was Andy Hamilton and Arthur Lowe and Hancock. There we go.
Lining them up today.
It's a guest celebrity-packed episode of our podcast.
I know, it's a game.
Jeff, I'll tell you.
He gets all these people on.
It's a game.
It's all these people on. Says it's just Kevin McNally. He's a fibber, you know.
That's fantastic. Well, nearly an armful. A pint. Oh, he did that one, didn't he? I can't do that. I end up going Bristol. A pint? That's nearly an armful.
I mean, I don't mind giving a reasonable amount, but a pint. Well, that's very nearly an armful. I'm sorry, I'm not walking around with an empty arm for anybody. It's cracking stuff, isn't it? It's just cracking stuff.
That is uncanny.
It was a great joy for me, of course, when we did the first ones in 2014 that Galton and Simpson were there for the recordings, and they were so generous and sweet to us. It was lovely.
Yeah. That's fantastic. So what's next on the list then, Kevin? Obviously, you've got a bit of ADR to run to.
I've got a bit of ADR to do this afternoon, a bit of teaching this evening. I start filming on Wednesday. I'm doing a wonderful project. Now, you have to sign NDRs nowadays. What can I say about it? It is the prequel to a very famous 1960s horror film.
Ooh.
And so I have been trying over the last month to summon up this actor who was in this film. And we're going to recreate that atmosphere, those people, but in the story before the story of the original film. So that's all I can give you. No guessing. But as soon as I'm allowed to release it, it'll be great. But you can all just go away thinking what your favorite 60s horror film was now.
Yeah, maybe we can get people to tweet in, see if anyone can guess it in advance.
I'm starting to run through my inner encyclopedia now. To be honest, there's only 3 entries in there because I'm not that well versed in such things. There isn't any capacity, but still, it's an exercise. You've got my appetite whetted for that. That sounds like a lot of fun.
And then did you say you're doing a Western as well?
I did a Western last year, Death on the Dearborn. That might be out this year. I must say, when the producer, who I knew well, I'd worked up in Montana with him on another film, and he asked me to do this because he knew I always wanted to be in a Western. I said, I've got a few questions for you. He said, has he got a hat? Yes. Has he got a badge? Yes. Has he got a gun? Yes. Has he got a horse? No, he's never on a horse. I said, write a scene when he's on a horse. I can't come back to England and say, I've just been in a Western, and they say, what's your horse like? And I said, I wasn't on one. They'll say, what sort of cowboy were you?
Yeah,
exactly.
And then I realized...
It's like going to Venice and not going on a gondola.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I said to him, I presume at my age, if you're asking me to play the sheriff in a Western, I don't last very long. He said 14 minutes. But I said, I don't mind. I'll get shot in the 14th minute.
You can do the sort of spin when they get shot.
Hit in the shoulder.
The way they fall. Do that.
I'm doing my own stunt at the end, and it's rather impressive, I have to tell you.
Oh, that sounds good.
I'm amazed already.
I was going to say, Judi Dench did 8 minutes of screen time, didn't she? Won an Oscar, so 14 minutes is you should get two for that, really.
Much as I loved making Death on the Dearborn, I think its Oscar tally will be quite low.
Well,
it's a low budget film, but it was tremendous fun to make.
Well, that's it. Films should be fun, shouldn't they? And it shouldn't always be about winning awards and things like that. Yeah. So I've got a question here that came out. I don't know if you saw this one, Paul, when it came on Twitter. I thought this was
Is it the one I'm looking at? Is it the one I'm looking at right now from Sophie the Otter?
Yeah. So
go on.
Sophie asks, Kevin, if you were a biscuit, what biscuit would you be?
I'd be a Leibniz chocolate biscuit.
Oh, that's a good choice. Yeah.
That's
I know.
Quite light, crispy, and a nice thick amount of chocolate.
Yeah, which hangs over the edge of the biscuit base, and you can nibble around them, can't you?
Yes, exactly. I was recently, I was in Toulouse and Budapest, and I have to be very careful because I'm diabetic, but my Leibniz biscuit count was absolutely extraordinary. I can only hope now, because you hear these stories in the profession, that next week a huge van comes outside and I'm sent a lifetime supply of Leibniz biscuits. That would be
and same for me and Paul.
We should do product placement so that we can basically stock up on food for the rest of our Natterals, Jeff.
I'm glad I
the rest of our Natterals. We can just stock up.
Perhaps I'll get a few bottles of that.
Yeah, or Blue Nun.
Whichever takes you.
I'm not a fan of the old Blue Nun. It's a little bit sweet, isn't it? But, I'll take it if it's going free. No mind about that, that's for sure. Sorry, I don't know where it just came from. Just nowhere. Just happens, you know what I mean? Yeah. I think that is pretty much all our questions, Jeff, unless there's anything else you've got on there. I mean, the good thing I liked about you, I do like about you, Kevin, is you took the time to answer a lot of questions on our Twitter page from fans directly.
People were...
I don't think anyone's ever done that before, and the fans were loving it. They loved to think, Kevin,
we're in a chat group with some other fans, and they were putting in screenshots, weren't they, of tweets that you were answering? And
Kevin's replied to me. Look at this.
People were
famous.
Really thrilled about it.
I was doing that as well, mind.
So that was lovely. So one last question. Where you've got work to do this afternoon, but have you got anything you'd like to say to Doctor Who fans that are listening?
Yes, I really admire your tenacity and your loyalty to Doctor Who, and keep it up. And watch out for some announcements later in the year.
Oh, that is exciting.
That's just going to break the internet saying things.
That
like
is
that,
that's a cliffhanger on par with Jodie turning into a weeping angel. I think that's probably a good point to end this episode on, isn't it?
Nicely done, Jeff.
Yeah.
Nicely done.
Well, Kevin, thank you very much for joining us today.
It's
been an absolute pleasure, and we look forward to seeing what's next from you in the worlds of Doctor Who and everything else you're working on as well.
Great, thank you. It's been my pleasure.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Very much so, Kevin. All the very best for whatever you're doing next.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been great speaking with you.
Thank you.